Blood rushed to her head as she stood barefoot on the cold tiled floor of the priest's house. Her eyes, red and swollen, were fixed on the man who once laid hands on her in blessing, and then in betrayal. Her voice cracked like thunder. "You got me pregnant, but denied it and left me to suffer. May God judge you, and may your life become as empty and broken as mine." Father Stephen's face turned pale. For a moment, he looked like he had seen a ghost. But then he straightened, his voice cold and sharp. "Leave my house now, Josephine, before I call security." The heavy rain started the moment she stepped out of the Reverend Father's quarters, like heaven itself had been listening. Josephine's dress clung to her body. Her swollen belly trembled with each sob. Her hands shook as she laid her final curse, louder this time, echoing through the church compound. "Let the heavens fight for me. Let your lies catch up with you. The same way you stood on that pulpit preaching love and purity, may it all come back to haunt you." Then she left, limping into the rain, her slippers soaked, her dignity shattered. But the story doesn't begin with Josephine, or even with Father Stephen. It begins in the city of Asaba, with a couple drowning in riches, but starving for the one thing money could not buy. In Asaba, there lived a man named Chief Anthony and his wife, Elizabeth. They were the kind of people everyone envied. Big house, fancy cars, a business empire, political connections. They had everything but a child. For 20 long years, Elizabeth's womb remained silent. No kicks, no cries, no tiny feet running through the mansion halls. Only emptiness. They tried everything. Local herbs, foreign hospitals, IVF, fasting and prayers, visiting prophets, sowing seeds, bathing in rivers, midnight prayers, but still nothing. And with each passing year, the whispers grew louder. She must have done something terrible in her past. Maybe she aborted too many babies in her youth. Why is Chief still with her? He should marry another woman. Elizabeth heard it all, smiling on the outside, dying on the inside. Every month, Elizabeth visited an orphanage. She would play with the children, buy them food, hug them tightly. But when it was time to leave, she always rushed to the car, locked herself in, and cried like a baby. "God, is it a sin to want my own child?" she would whisper into her palms. Her husband always wiped her tears. "We will keep waiting on God," he would say. He's never late. But deep down, even he was beginning to lose hope. When Elizabeth turned 45, there was no celebration. No cake, no guests, no music. That morning, she stared at herself in the mirror for a long time. The woman staring back looked older, tired, drained. "I don't want to celebrate anything today," she told her husband. "There's nothing to celebrate. I only wanted one thing from God. Just one." Chief Anthony's heart ached, but he stayed strong for her. "Let's go to church instead," he said softly. "Let's pour out our hearts on the altar." The church was quiet that morning. A few candles burned gently before the statue of the Virgin Mary. The golden crucifix above the altar gleamed in the sunlight. Elizabeth knelt. Chief knelt beside her. They held hands. They prayed not with words but with tears. And then Chief Anthony spoke. "Lord, if you bless us with a child, even now, he will grow up in your house. He will be your servant. He will be your priest." Elizabeth repeated the vow. That was their promise. 4 weeks later, Elizabeth woke up feeling strange. Her head hurt, her stomach felt funny, and her body was very warm. She sat up slowly in bed and called her husband. "I think I have malaria," she said. "I feel so tired and sick." Her husband came rushing in, worry on his face. "We're going to the hospital. I don't want to take chances." At the hospital, the doctor listened carefully. "Let's run some tests. We'll check for malaria and also pregnancy." Elizabeth looked at the doctor, surprised. "Pregnancy? Again?" "It's best we check," he said. They waited. Every minute felt like an hour. Elizabeth's heart raced. Chief Anthony paced back and forth. Then the doctor came in, holding the test results. He smiled. "You are pregnant." There was silence for 2 seconds. Then screams. Boy. Chief Anthony lifted his wife into the air. Elizabeth cried and laughed at the same time. "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you." In that small doctor's office, 2 hearts became one again. A miracle had come. When they got home that afternoon, they dropped everything at the door. Right there in the living room, they knelt side by side. "Thank you, God," Elizabeth whispered, tears falling freely. "You remembered me." They shared a bottle of wine, holding hands, smiling. They didn't call anyone yet. This was their moment, just the 2 of them and the tiny life growing inside her. From that day, everything changed. Elizabeth didn't lift a finger. No sweeping, no cooking, no bending, no lifting. Chief Anthony told everyone in the house, "My wife must not be stressed. I don't want her to even open the fridge." Servants rushed whenever she called. Cooks made her special meals. Maids fluffed her pillows. Her husband rubbed her feet every night, even when he was tired. She glowed. She laughed again. She touched her belly every morning and whispered, "You are loved, little one." 9 months later, on a calm and quiet evening, Elizabeth went into labor. They rushed to the hospital. After hours of pain and pushing, she heard it, the cry of a newborn. "It's a boy," the doctor said. Elizabeth wept. Her husband kissed her forehead. They named him Stephen. Stephen's dedication was like a royal event. The church was filled with people dressed in white and gold. Priests, friends, family, even strangers, everyone came. They sang. They danced. They gave testimonies. Food flowed. Drinks poured. The whole city of Asaba knew about the miracle child. The boy was baptized in the Catholic Church, just like his parents had promised. "He belongs to God," Chief Anthony said. Stephen was different from other children. Even as a toddler, he was quiet and thoughtful. He listened a lot, watched a lot. And when he smiled, it was like peace settled in the room. His parents began to teach him the Catholic faith early. Morning prayers, evening prayers, Bible stories, mass attendance. He joined the mass servers as soon as he was old enough. He loved wearing the white robe, carrying the candles, standing beside the altar. When it was time for school, his parents sent him to a minor seminary, a special school for boys who might want to become priests. Stephen loved the quiet. He loved the chapel, the gardens, the smell of incense. He studied hard and obeyed the rules. But sometimes he wondered. In his 5th year at the seminary, his parents visited him one weekend. They sat in the garden under a big mango tree. "Son," his father said, "we made a promise to God before you were born. We asked for you, and we told God you would be his." Stephen looked at them surprised. "We want you to be a priest," his mother said gently. "It is the vow we made before the altar." Stephen didn't answer right away. He looked up at the sky, then down at the grass, then at his parents. "I don't know yet," he said slowly. "I'll think about it." They smiled, but deep inside they were scared. What if he says no? What if he doesn't want to be a priest? But they said nothing, only hugged him tightly. Stephen stood tall and proud in his white graduation gown. The sun was bright that day, and the church bells rang joyfully. He had just finished from the minor seminary, and his parents could not stop smiling. "You made us proud, son," Chief Anthony said, pulling Stephen into a hug. Elizabeth wiped happy tears from her eyes. God has been faithful. That evening the house was quiet and warm. The air smelled like roasted chicken and fresh flowers. Stephen was in his room when his father called out, "Stephen, come to our room. We want to talk." Stephen walked in, still in his graduation clothes. His parents were sitting on their bed, both looking serious. His mother held his hand gently and said, "Before you were born, we made a big promise to God. We told him that if he gave us a child, we would give the child back to him, as a priest." Stephen blinked. He sat down slowly. "It was a painful time in our lives," Chief Anthony added. You were our miracle, and this was the vow we made. Now it is time to fulfill that promise. Stephen sat quietly. Then he said something that made his mother's smile disappear. I don't want to be a priest. Elizabeth's heart dropped. I want to be a footballer, he continued. I dream of playing for big teams. And I want to marry and have a family someday. Elizabeth broke into tears. Please don't do this, she whispered. Don't break our promise. I have waited too long, prayed too long. Stephen's heart ached. I'm sorry, Mama. That night, Stephen lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was dark, but his thoughts were loud. He remembered his mother's cries, her hands shaking, her voice breaking. He remembered the promise they made before the altar, the candle-lit church, the tears in their eyes. Stephen turned on his side and squeezed his pillow tight. His dreams of football, they were beautiful, but his parents had given him everything. And now they were asking for one thing. One thing. By morning his mind was made up. Stephen walked into the dining room slowly. His parents looked up from their tea. I've made my decision, he said. They both stared at him. I will go to the major seminary. I will become a priest. Elizabeth gasped. She stood up and hugged her son tightly. Thank you, Jesus, she cried. Chief Anthony smiled and patted Stephen's back. You made the right choice, my son. But Stephen's heart was quiet. Too quiet. He had given up his dreams. At the major seminary, Stephen was loved by his teachers. He was smart, bold, and always gave good answers in class. But behind that holy smile was a secret life. Stephen had a phone he wasn't supposed to have. He would sneak out of the hostel at night. He smoked behind the chapel. He drank at nightclubs in the nearby town. He went to parties and met girls. Lots of girls. He was clever, very clever. He never got caught. He always cleaned up well, wore his white cassock neatly, and never missed mass. His classmates sometimes suspected things. But no one ever had proof. And his parents, they saw none of it. They only saw the smiling young man who came home during holidays and led morning devotions. Years passed. Stephen finished his studies. On the day of his ordination, the church was full. Candles burned. Songs rose to the sky. Stephen knelt before the bishop, and the bishop laid hands on him. From today, you are a priest forever. The crowd clapped. His parents cried with joy. People whispered, that's the miracle boy. The one his parents waited 20 years for. Elizabeth held her husband's hand tightly. Our promise has been fulfilled, she said with a trembling voice. Stephen smiled and waved. But deep inside, something felt lost. He had become everything his parents wanted, but not what he wanted. After Father Stephen's ordination, the bishop sent him to a fast-growing Catholic parish in Lagos. The church building was big and beautiful, with painted walls, polished floors, and a large crowd that came every Sunday. The people in the church were happy to have a new priest. They decorated the church for his welcome and sang songs with joy. But more than anything else, the women in the church couldn't stop staring at Father Stephen. He was very handsome. His skin glowed. His voice was calm and deep. His smile made hearts flutter. He looks like a movie star, one woman whispered. Ah, if he were not a priest, another one giggled. Every Sunday, some of the women wore their best clothes and heaviest makeup, just to get Father Stephen's attention. Some stayed behind after Mass, pretending they had personal problems. Some offered to help clean the church. Others offered to cook for him. Soon, many ladies started visiting the parish house, where Father Stephen lived. And slowly, the visits became something else. Father Stephen knew what he was doing. He would welcome the ladies with a kind smile, pray with them, ask about their lives, and then slowly begin to lure them into sin. I will pray for you, he would say. You are special, he would whisper. And before long, he would lead them into his bed. It started with one woman, then two, and more. For some women, It was their first time ever entering a priest's house. They came thinking they would get holy advice, but they left with broken hearts and heavy secrets. Some of them got pregnant. When they came to tell him, crying and shaking, he would become cold. "What do you mean you're pregnant?" he would snap. "You must be lying. Don't even try to ruin my life. If you tell anyone, no one will believe you. I'm a priest. You're just you." He would threaten them with strong words and even tell some that he would deny them in public. Scared and ashamed, many of the women terminated the pregnancies. Others, who couldn't bring themselves to do it, gave birth quietly, raising babies without fathers, afraid to say who the father was. They would cry at night, holding their babies, asking God, "Why me?" When Father Stephen wasn't busy with his secret sins in the parish, he would travel to other cities, places where no one knew him. He would dress in plain clothes, meet with other priests who were just like him, priests who had also left the narrow path. They would go to clubs, drink strong drinks, smoke and dance all night. They would flirt with women, and sometimes even fight with other men over girls. They laughed loudly. They called themselves men of God who still enjoy life. But deep inside, Father Stephen had a hole in his heart. He was always restless, always afraid someone would find out the truth. Soon people in the church began to talk in whispers. "Have you noticed something strange about Father Stephen? He's too close to the young women. I saw one lady coming out of his house at midnight. That girl that just gave birth. She said nothing about the father." The whispers grew louder. Rumors began to spread like fire. The bishop heard of it and was worried. So he called a meeting and set up a church committee to investigate Father Stephen. The committee was made up of older priests, nuns, and respected church leaders. They sent Father Stephen a letter. He was to come and answer questions. Father Stephen dressed in his best priest robe and walked into the meeting room with confidence. He smiled as if nothing was wrong. "My dear fathers and sisters," he began, "these rumors are lies from the pit of hell. People are just jealous. Maybe they don't like how fast the parish is growing. Or how young I am." The committee looked at one another. "Have you had any inappropriate relationship with any woman in the church?" one priest asked. "Never," Father Stephen answered quickly. He quoted the Bible. He talked about holiness. He even shed fake tears and said, "I gave my life to God. Why would I do such things?" The committee believed him. They thanked him for his time and told him to return to his parish. Now that he had fooled the committee, Father Stephen felt powerful. He became even more careless. He continued to sleep with women in the church, hiding behind the holy robe. More women got pregnant. More lives were broken. But still, no one was brave enough to speak out. They feared the church wouldn't believe them. They feared shame. Some even feared God would punish them if they exposed a priest. Father Stephen smiled more in public and preached louder in church. But deep inside, a storm was forming. It was Easter weekend in the big Catholic parish in Lagos. The church was filled with joy, flowers, and music. People wore their finest clothes and smiled brightly as they sang, "Christ is risen." Among the crowd was Jessica, the only daughter of the parish catechist. Jessica had just returned home for the Easter holidays. She lived and worked in another city, so her parents were very happy to see her again. Jessica was very beautiful. She had a bright smile, smooth skin, and a graceful way of walking. People turned to look at her whenever she passed. After the Easter Sunday Mass, the catechist proudly took his daughter to meet Father Stephen. "Father, this is my daughter Jessica," he said with a smile. Father Stephen looked at her and smiled back. "Ah, the famous Jessica. I've heard a lot about you," he said, shaking her hand. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Spark. They exchanged greetings. And they also exchanged phone numbers. That night, Father Stephen called Jessica. They talked for a long time. About life. About work. About money. About dreams. Before the call ended, Father Stephen invited her to his house for lunch the next day. Jessica paused, but then said yes. The next day, she dressed nicely and arrived at the priest's house. He welcomed her with a big smile. The table was filled with delicious food: jollof rice, chicken, salad, and soft bread. There were also bottles of alcoholic wine. They laughed and ate. They drank glass after glass. Soon they were both tipsy. Then Father Stephen leaned forward. "Jessica," he said softly, "can I kiss you?" Jessica, feeling light from the wine, nodded. The kiss turned into something more. Before long they were in his room on his bed. And they made love. After the Easter holidays, Jessica returned to her city. But a few weeks later something strange happened. She started feeling sick, tired, moody. She went to the hospital and did a test. The nurse came out with a smile and said, "Congratulations, Ma. You're pregnant." Jessica's heart dropped. She couldn't breathe. A priest. I'm pregnant for a priest. She rushed home and called Father Stephen right away. But when he answered and heard her voice, his tone changed. "You must be mad," he said coldly. "Don't ever call this number again. Stephen, it's your child. Don't try to ruin my name. If you say anything, I will make your life miserable." Jessica dropped the phone and cried and cried. Her hands shook. Her heart was breaking. She felt dirty. Lust. Shame. Who will believe me? The next day, Jessica bought pills to end the pregnancy. She sat in her room, crying as she swallowed them, praying they would work. But days passed, and the signs of pregnancy remained. She went to the hospital for a D&C. The doctor looked at her and said, "It's a 50-50 chance. It could go wrong." Jessica was scared. "I don't want to die," she whispered. So she made a brave choice. She decided to keep the baby and tell her parents the truth. She called her father and told him everything. There was silence on the line. Then his voice broke like glass. "Stephen. Father Stephen." The next morning, the catechist stormed into the parish house. He knocked hard. "Stephen, come out." When Father Stephen came out, the catechist shouted, "You ruined my daughter's life." "I don't know what you're talking about," Stephen said, trying to look calm. "Your daughter is lying." The catechist was shaking with rage. He reported Father Stephen to the church committee. The same committee that had once believed Stephen's lies. Stephen was summoned again. He denied it again. But this time the committee insisted on the truth. "We will conduct a DNA test," they said. Weeks later the DNA results came back. Stephen was the father. There was no more hiding. A letter was sent to the bishop of his diocese. And on a cloudy Thursday morning, Father Stephen was laicized. He was no longer a priest. The white robe was taken from him. The church bells did not ring that day. The once holy man had fallen. When his parents heard the news, Elizabeth, his mother, collapsed. She held her chest and cried out, "My son, my only son." She was rushed to the hospital. But it was too late. Her heart had broken. She died that night. At her burial, Stephen stood by the grave, shaking. His eyes were red with tears. Beside him was his father, Chief Anthony, pale and weak. Stephen turned to him and said, "I never wanted to be a priest, Papa. I wanted to play football. I wanted to be free. But you made me choose your dream, not mine." His father looked at him with tired eyes. Regret covered his face like a shadow. "I'm sorry, my son. I'm so sorry." Stephen dropped to his knees beside his mother's grave. And for the first time in a long time, he truly wept. A story of broken dreams, lost choices, and heavy consequences. Let children grow into who they are meant to be, not who we force them to be.